book of Genesis, chapter 1, verses 27 to 31. This is found on the first page of Genesis. So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and everything that creeps upon the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day.
Amen. Thank you, and thank you to our guest conductor today. The gospel lesson comes from the first chapter in John. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him. Yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who were born not of blood, or of the will of the flesh, or of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. And we have seen his glory. The glory is of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. The law indeed was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. All thanks and praise be to God for his word. May it enlighten us, strengthen us, and lead us onward in our journey together as the people of God. Amen. Let me show you a picture. This is a close-up of the hands in a picture that is very famous, and many of you know what it is by looking at this already. This is the picture that Michelangelo painted on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, that wonderful mural in which God is reaching out to humanity. And I show you that picture because Michelangelo wasn't so modest in the bigger picture, and I'm not going to show that. But study for a moment the space, the gap between the picture of God that comes in on your right side, his hand, and the picture of the human being who reaches out as well, and his finger is down, and God's is forthright. And there's a gap. And we might ask, by looking at the picture, what's in that gap? What's in that gap is everything human that is required and happens, not always required, sometimes it just happens out of our control, but everything involved in that journey that we continually take to find our way to God. And this morning I'd like to focus on that a little bit because in a way that gap represents the convergence of three important days that happen all together today. Today is the first Sunday in Lent, a day that begins our spiritual contemplation in a different kind of a way, in a season that tells us about the journey of Jesus to Jerusalem and the cross. Our contemplation, the spiritual contemplation of the lengths to which God went on our behalf. That's the first day we recognize today. The second day is Valentine's Day, because Ruth expects me to say something about love. And the third day in this day is for the wonky part of me and any of you that like to get wonky, and I'll be explaining that in a moment, Evolution Sunday. And I'm going to bring them all together. Just watch.
From the dawn of our species, what we know of the universe has come from what we could see, from light. Visible light for the first stargazers, ultraviolet and infrared light for the Hubble Space Telescope, microwaves and radio waves blasting from the cores of galaxies. But there are other vibrations we can't see. 100 years ago, Albert Einstein proposed his theory of general relativity. He predicted that the acceleration of massive objects would roil the fabric of space and time, sending out gravitational waves. Nobody had detected one until now. A billion years ago, in a distant galaxy, a pair of black holes circled each other. They spiraled inward and finally merged. The collision unleashed the energy of 1 billion trillion suns in a fraction of a second. That energy is still spreading outward in the form of gravitational waves, space-time distortions rippling across the universe at the speed of light. As a gravitational wave travels, it compresses space in one direction and stretches space in the other, like sound going sideways. This push and pull weakens with distance. The wave fades to a whisper, so faint that physicists long thought that gravitational waves would never be measured on Earth. But in Louisiana and Washington, two of the most sensitive detectors ever built have been waiting and listening. Astronomy has grown ears. This is LIGO, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. Each detector has an L-shaped antenna with arms 2.5 miles long. Inside the ends of each arm, mirrors of ultra-pure glass are isolated from the noise, heat, and vibrations of the outside world.
It gets wonkier after this, but that's wonky enough for my purposes right now. If you've been reading the newspaper, you know that this outstanding discovery just occurred in the past week, and it confirms what Einstein said 100 years ago, but we finally have the technology to prove it. It's a wondrous thing, this creation in which we live in. And wondrous even more is the fact that God has given us good minds to discover and discern what this creation actually does. And that's amazing. I'm not a scientist, but I have been a philosopher all my life, and the fact of the matter is, it is simply amazing to behold. I don't know all the intricate details to explain how that all works, but the big picture is enough to overwhelm me and make me dance because of what the Creator has done for us. Back in 2005, when I was serving Trinity Presbyterian Church in Palm Coast, Florida, I became, in fact, I was a charter member of a movement that became known as Evolution Weekend. Back in 2005, 200 clergy from around the country, just 200 from around the country, signed a letter which part of it said this: "We, the undersigned, Christian clergy from many different traditions, believe that the timeless truths of the Bible and the discoveries of modern science may comfortably coexist." They asked us, the 200 of us that signed on, they asked us to write letters to the editor, to our local papers, about this. And I did. I wrote to the Daytona News Journal, and it was longer than a letter. They published it as an op-ed, and you wouldn't believe the firestorm I created in 2005. In 2016, over 14,000 clergy of Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and Buddhist faiths have signed on to this Evolution Weekend letter. So let me tell you a story. The Holy Earth people came into being when first man and first woman came from the first world to the glittering world which we know as Mother Earth. First man was created through the meeting of black and white clouds. First woman from the joining of yellow and blue clouds. I like that part of the story. Women are more colorful than men. They lived together within the safe boundaries of the 4 sacred mountains, which can be located in the tri-state area of Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. They lived there. They sang their blessing song. They built their hogans, and they gave birth to the Diné people. That's their name for themselves. White man called them Navajos. Now, a scientist will go to Chinle, Arizona, which is the very heart of the Navajo reservation. And that scientist will go and tell those elders of that tribe that their creation story is way out of whack because their DNA proves that they came from Asia. They migrated north across what used to be the land bridge at the Bering Strait, which no longer exists, and then migrated south until they reached the tri-state corner. And then they will say to the scientist, "We don't know if it happened exactly this way, but we do know that the story is true." It is true because they tell them who they are as a people. And when you have almost been made extinct by transplanted Northern European cultures with a different creation story, you're going to hang on to your own, rightfully so, with everything you have. Let me tell you another story. In the 4th and 5th tablets of the Enuma Elish, which is the ancient Babylonian creation epic, the god Marduk, who you see on your right, went to war basically with his mother. Marduk went to war against the mother god Tiamat, and he defeated her. And after she was dead, he split her into 2 parts, making the sky out of one half and making the earth from the other. And then, as a belated, maybe memorial to his mother, he put stars in the sky and people on the earth. And he gave those people 7 days a week. But he proclaimed and declared that the 7th day was the day of the crown, a day when the whole of creation would rest. When the ancient Hebrews were taken captive by the Babylonians, they marched into Jerusalem and they literally took those people out of Israel and made them captives in Babylonia. When the ancient Hebrews were taken captive, they learned this story. And lo and behold, friends, if you know the scholarship of the Old Testament and the New, especially with the Old Testament, what you learn is that the Hebrews did not write down on paper Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 until they were in Babylonian captivity. That's historical fact. Now, a scientist will come along and tell the ancient Babylonians, as well as the ancient Hebrews, that none of this was true, because you see, there's something called the Big Bang. And those ancient Babylonians and those ancient Hebrews will say, we don't know if it happened exactly this way, but we know that this story is true. True because it tells them who they are as a people. And true because when many different cultures and peoples compete with each other in this world as they do today for the increasing scarcity of Earth's blessings, their story and our story is important, and it is true. Because the truth from God has nothing to do with our debates about the facts and the minutia. Truth has to do with the fact that it is God's deepest desire and it's God's most important priority that all of us who have different stories and come from different places figure out how to live with each other before we destroy each other. Instead of all of our competing stories, along with what science tells us, which is different, instead of all that being roadblocks to relationship with each other, we need to be hearing the love song, the love letters of God this morning on the first Sunday in Lent, on Valentine's Day, and on Evolution Sunday. So, God created humankind in His image. In the image of God, He created them, male and female. He created them. God then blessed them and made everything for their benefit, telling them to take care of it all with as much care as they can muster that comes from the very soul that God breathed into them. But we are not gods, you and I. We are mere humans, imperfect. We falter. We mistook the word dominion for control, when in the Hebrew it means take care of. We are imperfect human beings who insist that the stories of our culture are preeminent and should control every other human culture on the face of the planet, long ago and for the future. We are imperfect human beings who can be arrogant and think that our story about our relationship with God is the only story. So John tells us, in the beginning was the Word. He was in the beginning with God. And that Word became flesh and lived among us to show us the way. And if anyone asks you if this is true, all you have to say is this: the law indeed was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. And you know what? That is the point of any story we ever tell, in whatever culture from which we have come. For indeed, the season of Lent is about grace. Valentine's Day is about the love that God invented. Evolution Sunday tells us the facts of our creation, but can never tell us the truth about who we have been created to be. That is, the children of God. Amen.